Either we are there or not, ITSP Magazine still gets the best stories. There are plenty of conferences and all sorts of events that spark our curiosity and allow us to start conversations with some of the world's brightest minds. In person or virtually, we sit down with them at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Together, we discover what the synergy of these three elements means for the future of humanity. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com. Reversing Labs is the leading provider of explainable threat intelligence solutions that dissects complex file-based threats. Its hybrid cloud titanium platform enables digital business resiliency, detects new high-risk threat vectors, and automates SOC and threat hunting processes. Learn more at reversinglabs.com.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Change-Making Podcast on ITSP Magazine. And this is the 4th episode. And of course, it's DEF CON week. And I'm so thrilled to have the Radio Frequency Village join us. So today I have two members, RF Hacker Sanctuary, who also put on the Radio Frequency Village. And the two members I have is Zero Chaos, and I have Rick Mellendick. Welcome, both of you.
Hey, good morning.
Thank you.
So let's just first start with what exactly is Radio Frequency, and what is the Radio Frequency Village all about?
So radio frequency is anything in the electromagnetic spectrum. We normally stick down to radio waves and higher, just trying to get anything that is kind of broadcast out into the world using those electromagnetic waves. We do go all the way up to, your vision, seeing lights and things like that, but most of the fun stuff we do is a lot lower in the spectrum. What is the Radio Frequency Village? It's just a group of people who got together who really like messing with stuff that you can't normally see. That's kind of why all of us do this, I think, is it's really interesting to open up that hidden world that actually runs this one, right? All these things that are interconnected and talking to each other that you don't normally get to enjoy, we like to enjoy.
Excellent. So let's just start diving in. We have some listeners that use Bluetooth, use Wi-Fi, but they don't understand possibly or don't know about security around them and what are the issues that they should know of when using it. So let's first start off with, what do you wish the public knew about using Bluetooth?
I definitely wish the public knew that using Bluetooth wasn't invisible to everybody around you. Bluetooth was invented specifically to take the place of cables. It's meant for short-range communication where a cable would have been the right way to do it, but that's inconvenient for whatever reason. So your headphones have Bluetooth because it's easier for you than having a cable on your headphones and those kinds of things. Watches are the same way. They're talking to your phone. They're 3 feet away from your phone. They don't need wireless, but could you imagine a wire running from your wrist to your pocket? That'd be really annoying, right? So we use Bluetooth for all these kind of low speed, low data, low distance connectivity, but it's only low distance because the devices themselves tend to be pretty garbage. They're not low distance to somebody who has a high gain antenna on the other side pointed towards you, and they're certainly not invisible because they're constantly talking to each other. The technology used in things such as Fitbits and smartwatches and all the fitness trackers and whatnot is called Bluetooth Smart. And while it's also called Bluetooth Low Energy, when you describe it to people, it doesn't sound like either of those things, because one of the chief things that it does is it broadcasts 4 times a second and says, I'm here, this is what I am, this is what I'm doing right now. Now, granted, that is actually low energy. It doesn't use a lot of power, and that's great. That's why your battery life's a little bit better. But it is constantly screaming out, hey, I'm here, come find me, this is what I am. Very specific details about what the devices are often available in these broadcasts. And it really It's amazing how big of a wireless footprint most people have when they don't even think about, I'm carrying a bunch of wireless devices, right? I've got a watch, I've got a cell phone. These are both talking constantly, and you just don't think about it. And then you get in your car and there's 4 TPMS sensors on the car, and those are broadcasting out too. You know, it really adds up quickly what your wireless footprint looks like.
Yeah, Bluetooth was initially, like Rick was saying, it was a personal area network. So the PAN, the idea of that type of network, wasn't something that big networking ever wanted to actually protect. So there aren't a lot of sensors for it. There aren't a lot of monitors. There aren't a lot of management from that perspective. It's usually connection to connection. The other small issue with Bluetooth that really people should know is turning your iPhone. So you basically have iPhones and Androids for the most part. There's some other types thrown in there, but for the most part, it's iPhone and Android. iPhone will not turn off Bluetooth if you put it into airplane mode, because that won't allow you to listen to your headphones, use your Apple Pencil, make your connections to your smart trackers and all those kinds of things. So it's helpful to know that when you're on an airplane and you put it into airplane mode, your Bluetooth is still functioning. You physically have to go in and flip that little switch on your screen to say turn Bluetooth off. Wi-Fi, on the other hand, does go off at least. So you've got that balancing act of security versus convenience that a lot of people don't realize. When you tie that into what Rick was talking, or Zero was talking about with tracking, it's a big difference. A large antenna on somebody receiving versus those tiny little antennas on the phones make a huge difference.
And Rick, you did bring up Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi. What do you wish that the public knew when using it? And that's the same for you, Zero, if you like to answer that too.
There's a one-word answer for that one. Don't.
It's don't. Everybody that we talk to that we're doing personal protection for, or that is a corporate executive, or somebody that cares about anything on their device, needs to understand that Wi-Fi in public spaces is wide open to everybody else using it. Once WPA3 comes into play and is a much more used in the public space, there is some encryption that's in place. But if you go into coffee shop of choice and join their open Wi-Fi, everyone can see everything you're doing, and has the ability to interject into that signal as well.
I want to even add to that. Not only is everything completely visible if you connect to an open public Wi-Fi, everything is completely visible if you connect to a WPA pre-shared key Wi-Fi. So if you go to your local restaurant and on the menu it says, check out our free Wi-Fi, here's the password. Everyone's sharing that password. And the way WPA1 and WPA2 work, all you need to decode the data is knowing that password. So if I know that password, I can still monitor all of the data on that network, even though it's encrypted. So it's basically not very private, as it were. So people can intercept all kinds of things, and that's really, really bad.
And another kind of caveat to that a lot of people don't realize is you don't have to do this in real time. You can catch that packet capture, you can sniff all that data, and if it takes you a week and a half to crack that Wi-Fi, Wireshark allows you to go in and decrypt that as you go through. So you can see a message from a week ago, a month ago, 2 years ago, once you figure out what that password is. So permanent secrecy doesn't exist either. And that's a big misnomer. People think that, they have to crack it while they're crack the Wi-Fi and get caught. Well, I just need to crack the Wi-Fi during the session that you were using it.
Yeah, you definitely have been hearing some cases of people using like free Wi-Fi at different places. And then next thing they know is like, hey, someone got into my Facebook account because they connected to what they thought was a public Wi-Fi, but it was actually an attacker using a system to have people like try to join their Wi-Fi, masking it as if free airport Wi-Fi.
Yeah, my favorite explanation for that is basically, what makes you believe that that network is what you think it is? It has an SSID of secure terminal. Does that mean it's the airport's Wi-Fi? There's signs everywhere that says that's the SSID, but do you know how to change the SSID on your access point? Probably you do. You probably didn't leave it as Linksys or whatever it is. You probably changed it to something. What stops you from setting it to Starbucks or McDonald's or whatever, right? Having an unencrypted access point and saying, oh yeah, this is totally Starbucks' access point. You have no idea if it's Starbucks' access point or not. right? And that's a really big thing. People connect to these things and you don't know whose it is. And even when there's a password, if you're walking through the airport terminal and the SSID and the password are on the sign, what stops me from configuring an access point exactly the same way? You have no idea what you're connecting to. And that's really bad.
Yeah, in the past, we've actually done capture the flag type engagements where we've done it for a game, but we also do this professionally. And one of my favorite attacks is to catch somebody. It's kind of called the coffee shop attack, but you catch somebody nowhere near their office building and you broadcast based on what their phone says it's looking for. It's called a probe request. That device is trying to connect to an access point. So you give it that access point that it's asking for. And the next thing you know, if you set up the attack correctly, can have somebody actually connect to you. What that's doing is that's getting them away from the protections of their organization and the monitoring and the firewalls and everything that goes into their defense. And you're just completely exposing them to whatever it is you want to give them in terms of DNS or web queries or just default websites if you want.
To rephrase slightly what Rick just said, to make it a little more understandable, turn off your Wi-Fi when you're not using it. That is exactly why people tell you that, because you are absolutely running around all of the time with what's called a preferred network list. That's everything your phone or laptop is connected to. And it's going to try to find those all the time to reconnect you, because obviously that's what you want. You want high-speed Wi-Fi. And if I can find my corporate office, it doesn't matter if I'm near my corporate office or not, I'm going to reconnect to that access point. So turn off your Wi-Fi when you're not using it is really sage advice, actually.
So my next question for you is, can you share a little bit about what exactly is fox hunting?
So when we started the wireless village, which is what it used to, Wi-Fi village, which is what it used to be called way too many years ago. One of my passions in the RF space is if you can find the signal, you have an opportunity to do something to the signal. When I say find it, I don't mean just seeing it in the air. I mean actually find the transmitter that is making the signal occur. Now, this gets into all kinds of different spaces, whether it be professional or the black hat hackers that are trying to find you, or somebody that's trying to help protect you. Finding that transmitter has always been a key. So finding the Wi-Fi on someone's phone, finding the Wi-Fi access point, finding a device that's been hidden from somebody planting a microphone inside of your office space. It all comes down to the same exact necessary skill, which is finding the device. In radio terms, there's always been a fox hunt. Ham radio operators have been doing it for years, where they go out and they find a big signal. What we wanted to do was bring this to the masses, and I don't even know what the number is at this point. It's in the thousands of people that have played our game over the years. We've given that opportunity to them with 5, 10, 15, 20 different devices at a conference. DEF CON being one of the more difficult ones, because you've got, over the years between 15,000 and 35,000 people, big bodies of water walking around the conference. In 5 or 6 of those 15 to 35,000 people, we have planted devices. They know about the device. The job of the contestants is to find that device. So using tools that Zero has created, using tools that Mike Kershaw, Draghorn has created, using tools that other folks over the years have made, we've given people the opportunity and the training and also the education on how to find those devices. And it gets back to my main point. If you can physically find the device, you can do something to that device. So that's kind of where fox hunting came from and where we push it. But in all of our training courses, in all of our contests, in everything we do, that is always a big part of it. Even this year with the RF Village being remote, we still have some devices on site that are doing this work with us.
This is also one of the most fun things we do, in my personal opinion, because it requires basically nothing, right? To do a Wi-Fi fox hunt looking for an access point, all you need is an app on your cell phone, and you can go chasing around the conference looking for it. So this brings the fun of what we do to all skill levels, to all people, regardless of what they've got with them. A lot of people will say, I'm not going to bring my laptop to a hacker conference. What are you, nuts? But of course they have their cell phones. They can't be out of communication, right? So they've got their phone and just quick download of an app, and you can go, running around looking for this access point. And this is probably the number one thing that we see people really just smiling and enjoying themselves at. But not only that, it's the number one thing that all the newbies, including a bunch of young children, play our game and do just this and do it well, because it gives them something fun to do running around the hacker conference, and it keeps them interested and excited about what we do.
I love that way of like learning hands-on style. I feel like that's the best way how to learn. So you did mention a little bit about tools, and I know that we have some tools, and there's always these great names associated with them. So if I'm going to read a couple of them out to you, and I would love for you to give a quick description of what they do and why the public should know about them. So let's first go with Wi-Fi Pineapple.
So you go to a bar, you order a pina colada, and they give you a pineapple, and it's got Wi-Fi in. No.
That's
real
not
good
too far off from the original, though.
That's where it was coming from. The original Wi-Fi pineapple, built by the guys and gals at Hack5, it just has given, and I think Rick's probably, a little more in tune with the back end of this, but from the front end piece, you've got the ability to look at, sniff, and then fake access points, along with doing a ton of different types of kind of neat tricks with the Wi-Fi, where you can redirect people, you can give them cartoons pop up, GIFs pop up on their phones, on their laptops, as well as doing really good pen testing reconnaissance. The Pineapple is a small radio. I think it's a 2 radio now. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, 2 or 3 radio, multiple antennas, and either a battery pack or you attach it to a battery pack, and it makes you fully mobile going out and doing reconnaissance and Wi-Fi mischief as needed.
Yeah, it's basically a purpose-built tool to run a couple of very common wireless attacks, Wi-Fi attacks specifically, to try to do certain things that are advantageous for a pen test. So for example, if you wanted to run that coffee shop style attack that Rick was talking about earlier, a Wi-Fi Pineapple is more or less exactly purpose-built to do that. Its main job is to sniff the air, find out what the client devices, the cell phones, the laptops are looking for, and then respond by saying, yo, that is me. You're looking for Frank? I'm Frank. Oh, you want Bob? I'm Bob too. And it just collects as many clients as it possibly can. And once those clients connect, they're using that Wi-Fi Pineapple for their internet access, which means that the attacker is on a network with them. They can serve them fake pages. They can give them real internet and just sniff it, whatever they want to do. But you've basically made a connection to a malicious attacker at that point, and that's what those devices are meant to do. There's similar devices that actually exploit the vulnerabilities in wireless keyboards and wireless mice. The receiver that you plug into your computer doesn't even know whether it's a mouse or a keyboard that you're using. So you can actually inject keystrokes into the wireless receiver, even if you only use a wireless mouse. And those kinds of attacks can be done from, I'm going to go with more than 100 meters away. I know you take the laptop, you take the keyboard and you put it on your lap, and you can't talk to the receiver anymore. But with a nice antenna and a nice radio, you can run that attack from quite a distance away.
I've done the attack at 150 meters. I can verify that one.
That's pretty scary. So next question I have is, how can we protect ourselves on wireless networks?
So I think Rick's key point is absolutely true. Most people aren't RF engineers. Most people don't have the tooling or the mechanisms to validate and verify that the devices that they're connecting to are the ones that they're connecting to. Turning Wi-Fi off when you're not using it is absolutely critical. Cell phone providers are getting better with unlimited packages in terms of tethering. Connecting a phone into a laptop with a cable and tethering as opposed to doing Wi-Fi means you don't have to turn Wi-Fi on. Having a mobile hotspot with you is going to be more secure and safer than using the public Wi-Fi. We may or may not get into discussing some of the issues with going over cell networks, but from a pure Wi-Fi perspective, yeah, having your own is great, but somebody can still fake it. Plugging it in is going to make your life a lot safer.
Yeah, you're talking to two RF engineers who have their house filled with Cat6 Ethernet cables. We use Wi-Fi when we need to use Wi-Fi, absolutely. But we have no illusions. It is slower and it is less secure than using a wire. So, if you can bring your own network with you, bring your own network with you. Things like WPA Enterprise, like you would use at an office building, or WPA3, which is the new standard coming out, replacing WPA2 for home use and business use. Those are pretty secure, but when you have anything that's posted publicly, if you've got the SSID and the passphrase posted publicly, for example, there's nothing you can do to secure that at that point. Even having a VPN or something like that is tenuous because you have to connect to this network, and most of the time you have to connect to it and then you have to agree to their terms and conditions, which means before you establish your secure VPN tunnel, you're taking your browser, which is probably the single largest attack surface on your machine, whether it's a laptop or a phone. Browsers have a lot of bugs in them. And if you go to some website to click I agree, there's a chance that somebody might exploit a bug in your browser or in one of your browser plugins that then successfully does something nasty to you. And just doing that much is something I basically never do. I leave my VPN set to always on, and if I can connect to my VPN, I call it good. If it wants me to click on something, the answer is I'm not opening my browser.
Yeah, Rick hits on a great point there. The free VPNs and the VPNs that exist out there are typically what is discussed as the protection against Wi-Fi, open Wi-Fi. The major problem with those is if it's free, you're the commodity, and your data is going through their system. Tools like WireGuard, OpenVPN, things like that are cross-platform. Rick mentioned always-on VPN. You're going to get people that say, well, I don't want my personal phone always on my corporate network. With a little bit of Googling and $5 for a Raspberry Pi Nano, or Pi Zero, sorry, you have the ability to create an endpoint at your home that you know is at least a relatively safe Wi-Fi. You have that always on VPN, and you definitely have a level of safety and security, and you know where your data is going, as opposed to who knows on the free VPN services.
So then my next question is, what can manufacturers do better to protect consumers with everything that you have shared so far?
That's actually fairly easy. A lot of manufacturers don't even do basic security updates in a timely manner. And I think that's a really big problem, especially when it comes down to things like Wi-Fi device firmware. That's the little blob that your Wi-Fi card loads to know what to do. A lot of manufacturers don't even seem to have a good understanding of, if there's a problem with this, how do I upgrade it? Forget security vulnerabilities, that regular bugs they can't fix because they don't have a clean way to upgrade that firmware. Apple gets a lot of points right here because they have a very, very strong ecosystem of keeping people up to date. If you've got a reasonably modern iPhone, you will constantly get the latest security updates. They call them regular OS updates, but the security updates are built into those. And you get that more or less right away, right? If you have an Android phone and you have it from Google, you get the same. I just got my 5th of August update today, and that's great. However, most other cell phone manufacturers don't, and that's kind of a problem. So if you don't get those updates, you can't stay secure. So picking devices that actively receive security updates is great. I mean, for the Android ecosystem, it's mostly Google and Samsung that do a great job. There's a few others that do an okay job, but keeping things up to date is like number one. Don't worry about somebody dropping a 0-day an attack with no defense against you when you don't have the latest security patches to start with. When it comes to keeping up to date, it's also really important to keep up to date with the standards, right? We've said a couple of times WPA3, WPA3. There's a reason, right? WPA2 was designed to fix WPA, which was designed to fix WEP. And web was designed to fix a marketing problem where everything was unencrypted and it looked bad. And that's what we've been band-aiding for years, right? So there's a lot of things that went into securing Wi-Fi that were more or less for show, right? And this standard has really shown a lot of age at this point. The kinds of attacks that are possible against it now are technically inconceivable when it came out. Running a brute force attack trying to find the passphrase with a computer from 2001 was, you wouldn't even bother. You'd be there for the rest of eternity. 20 years later, computers are faster, especially expensive stuff is faster. And it's a really big difference in security between WPA2 and WPA3. WPA3, for example, provides what's called forward secrecy, which means that if I capture Wi-Fi traffic forever and I get the password, I can't decrypt it later. It's not something that you can do once you've missed the time that it happened. Whereas with WPA2, I can record everything for a long time, eventually crack the password, and now I can decrypt everything, right? So it's a much different security standpoint, and it's definitely really important to keep up to date on those standards. So if you've got a home router or whatnot that you've had kicking around for 10 or so years, now's a great time to update, like a really great time to update. Get something with WPA3.
Excellent. My next question for you is, how can radio frequency, and for those that don't know, if I use or we use RF as basically the acronym for radio frequency. So how can radio frequency or RF tools used to control industrial equipment?
So a lot of stuff is actually radio controlled just because it's easier. Again, imagine a wire between your watch and your phone. That's insane. It's the same with a giant crane, or apparently a friend of mine was having his tree cut down, and it's the same with the feller buncher, which is a large chainsaw on an arm. It's also radio controlled because it's just a lot easier to stand next to the tree and radio control your giant chainsaw, I guess. But these devices are almost never created with an idea of somebody might want to do something evil here. So they're usually very, very simple. Think about like a kid's remote controlled car versus a professional remote controlled car. The difference is basically that one is faster, right? And it's the same when they take that same mechanism and they put it on a chainsaw or they put it on a giant boom crane or whatever it is. They're really, really simple. They're not intended for security purposes. I mean, even the majority of garage door openers aren't really intended for security purposes. They're just replacing you physically picking up the door. They're not intended for security. And that's really a big problem.
Yeah, uptime is typically the major push with a lot of these devices. Reliability and uptime. Security is usually third or fourth on that list. When security's dropped that far down the pipeline, like an engineer looks at it after it's been designed, it's not going to be as secure as what we know. We have used things such as dog training collars in our capture the flag, just to sort of illustrate the point. It's funny for us to watch people shock each other, but it also really drives home the point that with a laptop, you can control something as simple as a dog training collar. They go to 10 based on the remote control that's used on those. Unfortunately, the devices go to 100, and nobody really realizes that until they start writing tools that go up against it. And what's interesting is now that the base level of tools with the radio frequency world have expanded so much, you can essentially record a signal, change a couple bits, and replay the signal off of a handheld device. It's gotten to a point where it's almost that easy. Car vehicles are one of the biggest examples of that at this point.
I would like to point out, though, that a lot of it does depend on when the device was created as to what they think the attack surface is, or if they even bother to consider the attack surface. So when they were making, a giant crane 20 years ago, were they worried about these kinds of things? The technology has changed drastically and the world has changed drastically since then. So if you take, some industrial equipment, a lot of times it wasn't even considered. Why would somebody try to break my crane or whatever? In the intervening 20 years, we've come out with a lot of things like software-defined radios and terrorism. And those both really drive the idea of considering your attack surface much more so to these companies. So these industrial things that have been created, I think a lot of it just predates when people cared about these things. And that's, something we have to look at now as we are in the modern age of software-defined radios. But things like drones, for example, were mostly considered for these attack surfaces. So you can't just replay a drone telling it to do something. It's not something you can do. You can't just fake the controller and take over a drone easily. You can abuse some of the protocols to say, make the drone not know where it is and force it to land or something like that. But forcing it to crash is something completely different. Whereas you could take the crane and just kind of slam it into something if you wanted to. You can't do that with a drone because they did consider those attack surfaces when they were making it. And they tried to make it resistant to those kinds of problems.
Yeah, and as a society, we have come to rely on GPS in our vehicles. The population of the world using Waze is a percentage. It's not a portion of a percentage any longer. And unfortunately, that's another RF protocol. And we really can't get into specifics in an open podcast like this, but GPS signaling is absolutely an RF signal that has the ability to be manipulated, changed, altered, or modified. So that being said, to Rick's Zero's example about the drone, we may not be able to make it crash, but we could tell it that it's on a vertical plane instead of a horizontal plane, or we could tell it that it's in a GPS location that's near a mountain versus near a desert, and it's just going to keep flying.
So it kind of sounds like it's probably easy to do some command spoofing with RF tools.
I would say very much yes. You can go to Home Depot and buy a remote controlled AC outlet, and that is a great way to turn your Christmas lights on and off. It's not a great thing to put on your fridge because somebody could easily just spoof that and turn your fridge on and off all they wanted or whatever it is, right? Most of these things they're not designed with that level of sophistication involved. And for an AC outlet that I'm going to connect to my Christmas lights, who cares, right? For a boom crane or a chainsaw, maybe I care, And
what's worse with a lot of those devices, they are controlled with an app. The app's connected to the internet. The internet is, pretty open. It's still wild, wild west as far as it's, the security of the overall internet is concerned. So that device that's in your house is connected to your Wi-Fi, which is then connected to the internet. You don't know what's going on those devices. So whether it be the AC outlet or your garage door opener or your bed or, Rick's pressure cooker, we have no control over what happens to it once it connects to the internet. And that's one of the other big fears that people have. We try and preach that you should have multiple wireless networks at your house, one that you absolutely care about using WPA3 or some other heavy security. And then another one that's pretty much just, I know anything on here could be junk and trashed. My TV, my PlayStation, my Xbox, my pressure cooker. And you have to, just understand that you can protect it as best as you can, but it isn't something I want to put my work laptop on.
So what I'm getting from this conversation is we need to be a lot safer, and we need to find ways to be a lot safer and just acknowledge that, we shouldn't always trust everything that we're using publicly, but also to be aware of our Bluetooth, be aware of the Wi-Fi that we're on, or even if we don't think we're connected to a Wi-Fi, just to double check our mobile devices as well. But it also sounds like this could be a situation where radio signals could be used to also steal corporate data. How is that situation going?
So one of the things Rick talked about, or I keep calling him Rick, sorry, Zero keeps talking about, is mouse and keyboard and Bluetooth. There are tools, one being called MouseJack, which gives you the ability to inject into the keystrokes of your corporate network. Have an example, hidden for those, not public releasing, the company, but we had a organization that was using wireless or wireless mouse and keyboards, not Bluetooth, but wireless mouse and keyboards that were subjected to the mouse jack attack. They were going through 2 air gaps into a hidden network, they were calling, out into the cloud, and were doing their secure code development on that VM inside of an AWS infrastructure. Well, what we've realized very quickly was that mouse and keyboard was still typing into that space. We were able to go through 6 different layers of security because the mouse and keyboard were connected to a secure code base. We were able to inject code into their secure code from that distance. That was about 150 meters away. So from a protection perspective, having someone in your organization that is security focused, RF minded, RF engineer would be better. Looking at all of the areas around your network from an RF perspective. And typically we say, look from about 10 megahertz to 12 gigahertz of space, find the things that shouldn't be there, determine if they are important to you, and then figure out a security mitigation around them. It sounds a bit daunting. We do it all the time. For a group that is just security and not necessarily RF security, it does take us a pretty significant learning curve to figure out how to get to that point. But unfortunately, if we know how to do it, the bad guys know how to do it. It's out there, and it is a mitigation that you need to look at from a corporate perspective. As far as data goes, any of the data carrying or packetized based RF signaling has the ability to exfiltrate data out of that network.
Excellent. So I've enjoyed our conversation, and I have one last question for you, which is, how can we support the Radio Frequency Village? How can we support both of you? Also, if someone wants to learn further about the Radio Frequency Village and also RF Hacker Sanctuary, what can they do? What are the first steps?
Well, I know this is a podcast, but we do sell t-shirts with our faces on them. Just kidding. Now, the best way to support us, honestly, this is an educational nonprofit, and our goal is simply to share our love of this stuff with others. So if this is something that interests you, if this is something you want to learn more about, check out our website, join our community. We've got a very active Discord of people that are just learning this stuff together and sharing what they know, because what's the point of doing all this and sitting alone in my basement? Like, I want to talk about it with other people. I want to learn things from them. I want to teach things to them. And this is all a labor of love for us. We're sharing this with people who love the same things as us, and that's what we want. If you have a company that wants to sponsor us, that's always great. We do a couple of hacker conferences every year, and we do have non-zero costs. But mostly we're just trying to foster a community of people that are interested in learning and share what we know with them.
We had to learn it the hard way. We had to read manuals and IEEE, documentation, and we still do. But you can go into our Discord channel, and we kind of make it as best of a rule as we can is basically don't be a jerk. So if somebody has a question that they want to ask and they think it's really, really, really basic, that's fine. Someone is going to answer that question. And if they don't, one of us is going to kick them out for being a jerk. So there are no dumb questions. The only dumb that exists is people that are afraid to ask the question. So please, if you have questions around this space, all of the major players in the RF world, developers of just about every tool out there, as well as hardware tools, are in our Discord channel, willing to answer questions and help.
Excellent. Well, thank you both, Rick, and I want to also say Rick, but I'm going to go by zero, for being on the podcast. And for everyone who is catching this right now and attending DEF CON, make sure to check out their RFCTF that's happening. And also thank you again. If you want to get to know them or learn more or be part of their growing community online, the links are within the details of this podcast, but it is rfhackers.com, and also the Discord invite will also be listed. So thank you both, and have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll catch you all later.
Thanks for having us.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Reversing Labs is the leading provider of explainable threat intelligence solutions that dissects complex file-based threats. Its hybrid cloud titanium platform enables digital business resiliency, detects new high-risk threat vectors, and automates SOC and threat hunting processes. Learn more at reversinglabs.com. Imperva is the cybersecurity leader whose mission is to protect data and all paths to it with a suite of integrated application and data security solutions. Learn more at imperva.com.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of our on-location conversation. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.